All right. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Good to have you here. And yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to dive into sort of badges and ribbons, which are like the probably most commonly used elements in Illustrator. We know we create a lot of logos. I think those are just like always being used, creating sort of like a badge or whatever. So I'm going to show you different ways of doing it. It's going to be really fun. So thanks so much for joining me. Feel free to say hello. I see people dropping in here. Good to have you here. Happy New Year to everyone. Hello, Salim and Christian and Issa and everyone. So fantastic. I'll kind of switch over, just kind of give you an idea of what I will be working on. And hello. Cool. Okay, it looks like Mudasir requested this video about 3 months back. So sorry for the delay, man. Awesome, though. This is good. Thanks so much for joining me. That's all I'm going to type in right in here. And we could start with something, maybe, for instance, obviously a circle, but I'm going to go into the star tool. If I draw out a star, right, we can hold down the shift key and kind of constrain it, right? If I hold down the option key, it's going to change it. Now I haven't let up on my mouse, but I can go ahead and hit the up arrow and start creating all those different points. Another thing you could do is hold down the command key, and then I can kind of shrink down those points like so. I like doing things this way because it's a little more visual and it's a little easier to understand. So with that done, there it is. I get it. That line thickness is a little bit crazy. Actually, it is what that was set to. All right, so that's what it will look like. Another way of doing it is if you just click. This is what I was modifying. The different radius, the inner radius and the outer radius. Okay, and the points. But I was doing all of this just by holding down the command key for the radiuses, and then the up arrows and down arrows to add points. Okay, so hopefully you know about that, Alex and Will Cook and everyone. You get the idea. I could do that again as I draw it out. It keeps that last setting going down with my down arrow key, making less points like that. Maybe a little bit more. I'm going to get something a little bit more drastic, kind of like that, like those points, right? This looks better. Done. I did that by holding on the command key. All right, so let's dive into this a little closer. Let's take a look at this because I'm thinking, you know what? This is pretty cool, but I want to round the corners. And by the way, pro tip, Paulina, you ready for this? And Santa, don't you hate it when you create something and it has this tilted axis? Like it's a square. Make it square. So you could always go up to Object, go into Transform, and then Reset Bounding Box. Boop. There it is. And that's for everybody who are perfectionists out there. It's just easier to work with, okay? Okay, so that being done, I can go ahead and use my Direct Selection tool, right? Because I'm thinking this is pretty cool. Maybe I don't like all the points. I can curve any of those points, right, just by grabbing that control point and kind of bending that in like so, okay? So now we have this badge, okay? So that's already 2 badges. Okay, we're going to talk about sort of the pros and cons of each of these, by the way. Zoop. There's 1 and 2. Yes, thank you, Michelle Bailey. I'm glad you appreciate this because it's kind of a huge thing, you know, just being able to reset that bounding box. So the problem with these, by the way, I'll just reset the bounding box here, is because I can't change these later on. So command key, it's command key on the Mac, by the way. Might be control key on PC. Sorry, I am on a Mac, so that's kind of the short of it. So let's take a look. Let me turn down my mic a little bit. But I can't edit this after the fact, which is kind of a problem. So could I do something like this, maybe using other tools and other effects? So I'll just create an ellipse. Zoop. Here's my ellipse, right? We have it right here. We can go into effects, right? And we can start to distort and transform this, right? This particular line. Let's do pucker and bloat. Okay, adding pucker and bloat, we'll select preview. this is just a different way to create badges. I could do this. There's a reason why it's kind of going like this. I'm looking at this. Let's actually get into distort and transform zigzag as well. Here's zigzag is actually what I want. I could also use pucker and bloat, but the problem is I need more points to add that pucker and bloat. But here I'm using zigzag. It does what I want. Ridges per segment, adding more ridges per segment, right? And we can see the size that we can adjust. So it's virtually those same settings, but the nice thing about this one that we have just created, which is highly similar to the first one, is I can always edit this one after the fact. So selecting it, again, it is set to zigzag. I can see over here in my properties panel, here is zigzag, clicking right there, and I can add more or less points as soon as I turn on preview, right? So that's how an easy way to make badges. I got some more stuff to talk to you about. So many things. Good to have you. Ayana from Brazil. Kenya's in the house. Merv, good to have you. Cool. Thanks, Merv, for joining me as well. Cleveland's in the house. So hopefully this is helpful. A lot of times this is what you'll do. We can get more advanced with this as well, okay? So what a lot of people will do is they will have individual vectors for, this shape, for instance, and then maybe they'll want a circle on the inside, and then they'll draw out a circle. And that's totally fine. If it works for you, fantastic, right? This works for you, great, okay? But there's more that we could do, especially when it comes to adding sort of multiple strokes, all right? So what I'd actually do, instead of having different vector graphics, is I would create a circle right down here. Zoop. There's my circle. And what if I want another circle on the outside of it? We could do that a couple different ways. We could use different brush strokes. And that's what I have in here. I have a ton of brush strokes. I can turn this one on, which happens to be a double line, okay? You have access to a lot of these, by the way. Here's another one. That's blue, right? Maybe that doesn't give me the control I want. Khalid, this is what I would do, right? I would undo that. I'd have this stroke, right? And I would use the appearance panel. You ready for this? Maria, good to have you. So right in here, I have this stroke. I'm going to add a second stroke using the appearance panel. This second stroke, just for differentiation, I'm going to make it red, white, that's larger. But we could do more with this because I can take this red stroke, for instance, and I can go into effect. We've already done some distort and transform. Sure, we could do that. I'm going to do offset path this time. Yes, exactly, Mohammed. That's what we're doing. We're controlling the double line. So offset path, we're going to preview this. You can see how it's offset this path for this badge. Okay. So, and sure, I can control this as much as I want, right? Make it 15, make it wider, adjust the miter limit if there's more going on with this, but that's all I'm going to do. Click OK, right? And now we have those two strokes, and I can change this to white if I want to, but I changed it to red initially just so you know the difference. This also works because then we can go crazy with this, by the way. I can add another stroke, and for this stroke we can go into distort and transform. We could do our zigzag like we did before, clicking preview, and there's our nice little zigzag. And for this we can even add an offset as well. So right now I'm going crazy. 20, right? Previewing that. There we have this badge. 25, right? Like that. Taking this size down for the 2, 1, boom. Now we have what looks like something that's pretty complex. Maybe it contains 3 strokes. It's actually Command Y. It's 1 stroke. So hopefully that works for you. Usama, thanks for joining me from Pakistan. Jessica as well from Italy. Cool. Good to have you. So yes, you can control. So yeah, it's just 1 circle to answer your question. Look, it's 1 circle, but you're using the appearance panel and you're adding different strokes and offsetting those strokes. So it makes it look like there's multiple lines. Okay. Nash, feel free to let me know exactly what you mean when you say that gouache pattern. Let's get into some more stuff, by the way, because a lot of times what I'll also do is I'll use brushes, right? So I'll come in here, I'll draw this out. I did this a second ago. Let's not worry about this. Let's reset. Clear appearance. There we go. It's back to normal, right? We'll just make it white. There it is. Okay, so here's this circle as well. Okay, and I mentioned brushes earlier. Let's actually just open up the brushes panel. I usually like amp this up full of various brushes. And guess what? We have an entire brush library you can of course take advantage of. So you can go into decorative banners and seals. Well, that's what we're creating, right? We're creating some seals, some banners. We can see them right in here. We could change those if we want to, but showing you what's available, turning these on and off. There's a reason why some of these are not showing, and I even want to kind of talk about making these as well, okay? But here's already a cool, basically a cool banner based on a brush, and that's all we're doing is we're applying a brush. If you happen to come in here and you look at some of this stuff, it's like, oh, I kind of like this one. For one, I don't like the green, for instance. I'm not crazy about the green. First of all, I need to make it larger. Double click on that brush, go into the brush options, and we need to change the colorization. So just make tints and shades, right? Change the tints and shades, apply to strokes, and it will tint it whatever color this is. So let's change this to red, and you can see how it changes that to red. This gets more interesting as I start to click on some of these others. Like this one here, it's picking up the red from the stroke, right? If I change that to a different color, let's change it to blue, you can see it changes it to blue. If I double click inside of here, you can see it's changing the tint of this particular brush to get me what I want, okay? So just be mindful of that, because just because you see one color in here doesn't mean you're stuck with it. I see too many people outlining the stroke and then changing it. No, you just need to make sure you double click on that particular brush and then change this to tints or tints and shades, okay? Let's actually go tints with this one. Oh, and let's apply that. And now we can see that it's blue. That's the color in my panel. Cool, fantastic. Let's move on. Can you save the shape in the tools like square and circle? So in saving this content, this is what I would do. Since I've modified this brush, I can save this as a new brush, right? A new pattern brush. Oh, actually not pattern brush. Sorry, artistic. Yeah. No. Silly me. I don't want to save this whole shape as a brush. I would want to save this stroke ultimately. Yeah. All right, so I could save these. When I was working with these shapes, when I was working on this actually was I was playing with the appearance panel. Anytime you're playing with the appearance panel and you want to save this content, you want to save it as a graphic style. So right over here, I can click right there. It actually saves it right here. I know it's hard to see, but that's actually what that shape is. So now if I go in fact, if I make a different shape, like a rounded rectangle, you can see how crazy that gets, which I guess that's not the greatest example, but that's always available to me anytime I make another ellipse. You can see that it's using that particular graphic style, right? And you can see a number of graphic styles. I don't even have that many in here. So let's move on. You get the idea. I would love to tell you something about 3D, probably another time, by the way, right? I would want to get into making banners, actually, because that's what we're getting into, is we're kind of making brushes. I showed you how to modify these brushes. You know how to add brushes as well. So if we take a look at some of these cases where we have this text, let's move this off to the side. We have a number of fun circles, right, that we can maybe apply our new stroke to. Let's do something really fast. Zoom, zoom. People are always doing this. Let's actually reset that and reset this back to basic appearance like so. Give me 1 second as I reset this. And use a brush in here, for instance. Okay, we have a number of brushes we could use. Here's an arrow, for instance, right? This is what I would use. And I want to show you how to make these sort of things, right? Here we have just an arrow, because I feel like this is a popular style to have these cross like so, right? This is all done with a brush. How would you make this? Well, or more importantly, how would you make various ribbons, right? Right over here. Thank you. So, yes. So to answer your question, Mudasar, we are going to be making a ribbon brush. So this should answer your question. We could go quite simply with this. So it'd just be grabbing the centerpiece right here. And let me just change the color of this so we can all see is to medium blue. So it's this particular, let's turn this off. It's this particular shape right here. Right? It just has a stroke on the top and it has a fill of red. We could take that, we can add it to as a new brush. It's going to be a pattern brush like so. Click OK. There it is, right? It doesn't have the ends to it just yet, okay? It needs these ends. So what do we do with these ends? We got to drop them in the swatches panel. So we'll drop it right in here. Here's a swatch and we'll call this, what is it? Right side. We'll just call it right. Done. And then we'll take this one, drop it in here. I'm just renaming this like so, just so I can find it because I have so many things going on here. So hit N for pencil. We will go ahead and draw that out. Let's take a look at this. This is a little crazy. Changing this to red. Here's my initial line. Here's my brush that I have created down at the bottom, right? Once I click on it, it actually does make that a brush. We can see that there's the lines. It doesn't have the ends, so we'll double click. And remember those swatches we've added. First off, let me auto center there. This end, I'm probably gonna get this wrong. Here's the left side. Oh, I always get it wrong. I usually put the left where the right is and the right where the left is. There's the right, boop, there it is. Now I have those two ends, like so, clicking OK, apply to strokes. We can see it has applied that to it. What's fun about this is we can start controlling the, with the width tool, we can start to control the sides. So we can make it kind of thick in the center and then thin on the ends for this. So you kind of get the idea. So hopefully that works for you. Again, I've done this before. I'm answering this question, and since we're talking about ribbons, and we've already made these beautiful, sorry for that mess. There we go. Since we've already made these badges, right? All these badges were done the way I just showed you. Let's get a little bit more interesting because I like this one, how this brush or this banner kind of goes in and out. Same process, right? Again, we could do this a number of ways. We take this one. We could take this long one here as well, selecting that, dropping it into as a brush, selecting pattern, clicking OK. There it is. Auto centering any corners. This side, zoop, there it is. In fact, I need one for the other side, so I'm just going to duplicate this guy, drag it down to the end. What do we want to do? We want to flip it by using the reflect tool, and then let's drop these in where they need to go, right? There's one. It's called, let's call this one 1, and let's go over to this one. Drop it in here. That's known as a pattern. We'll just call it 2 for the sake of this. Okay. Sorry, I'm not reading chat right now. Hello, Jeremy, Afroja. Good to have you here. Okay, so good point about like sort of like restarting and where these brushes are being kept. I want to talk about that. So here's what I just made. This is the one that actually goes in and out, right? We haven't attached the ends onto it yet. So we'll go back into the options. What do we want to do? Put one right here. Boom. Up. We want to put number 2 right here. Wait for it. Boop. And then 1 is the start, like that. Hopefully you could see that. I get it's kind of small. Clicking OK, applying to the strokes, and now we can see that curving like so. Okay, so in painting, zoop, zoop, you get the idea. I'll put this between these two. We'll do, there you go, a fun little ribbon. You get the idea. We can do a larger one right here, like that, and increase, decrease the size. You understand how this goes. Cool. And we could always make it thicker again by using the width tool, making it thicker in the center, right, and thinner on the ends. Okay, kind of like this one a little bit better, but that's what I wanted to show you. Janelle, thanks for liking it. Jeremy thinks it's boring. Hey, I don't know what to tell you. If it is something you already know, maybe this is boring. But I guarantee you, if you watch the whole thing, you've probably learned quite a bit. So Shan, just so you know, you can drop an image in at the end of a banner. That's essentially what I was doing. Any one of these, by the way, I could make a flower, anything like that. I have this stroke right here. Let's actually see what I have. Oh, here we go. Let's get rid of this effect. Wait for it. Let's go back to just a basic format. So here's just a stroke, right? That's 1 point. Clicking right here, clicking even right here, just so you know, here's a snake, right? So here I have a case where there's a different image on the beginning and the end to make this fun snake that I've, made in a previous stream. You get the idea. Cool. So yeah, Ken, you can always view this replay, by the way. Brushes are certainly powerful. I have a lot of fun with them because they're so flexible. Whether you're making a snake, a whole flower scene. In this case, I wanted to cap the ends. So right here for the ends of this particular pattern brush, I added these ends that just matched up perfectly, okay? By the way, if you want to kind of deconstruct a brush, draw out a line, you'll see it right here, and expand appearance, right? And you can get an idea of how this was made. As I ungroup it, you could see the individual parts, right? This is a pattern brush. The start, the end, the middle that repeats. Right on, Shan says, right on. Yeah, so Alexander, looks like you're doing some 3D with some 3D revolve. That's awesome. We'll have to talk more about that later on when I'm not dealing with banners and badges. I personally love 3D. Keep in mind, Illustrator does a pseudo 3D, and a bad render result, just so you know, you're making, those are vector lines, so it shouldn't be really a rendering as much as it is vector paths, right, that you can always expand appearance for. So that's all I have for you. It is, what is it, 2020? I can't believe it's 2020. But just so you know, for those of you that are curious, here we go. Let's just change this to 2020. So those of you who use Photoshop, it is Photoshop's 30th anniversary coming up. And that's all I have for you. So cool. Shadow and blur effects later on. Hopefully you learned a lot. If you watched this, I'm sure you learned a ton. The key thing is to make sure content's going to be editable for changing later on. Because if you're anything like me, you're going to want to change it later for whatever reason. So thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate you, Asa and Sophia and Zisan and everyone joining me on this beautiful Monday. And Michelle and Hinkson and everyone. So I'll be live streaming this Friday. And that's all I have for you. So have a beautiful day. Go make something cool. Share it with me. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Would love to see what you're creating, and just so we can keep in touch, right? Because we're all in this together. Go be nice to one another. Go call your mom. Drink lots of water. Get a good night's sleep. And then we'll all be better for it.